All right, Dan, here we are. We're the Varsity Voices, and this is week 10. You know what week 10 means, Dan?
Playoffs, baby.
First week of the playoffs. How about that?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's a great time of year. I was talking to a coach today and said it's like a shot in the arm for practice and everything else. It's like just when you kind of get lulled to sleep or can get bogged down in the monotony of practice in the regular season, even if you're in big games, it hits different when it's playoff time.
It does. And everybody's got a skip in their step at practice, right?
Yes.
Before the first playoff game, but it's going to be an interesting playoffs for the Chicago Catholic League. So I think for the second straight season, they've put 14 teams in the playoffs.
Wow.
It's the second most qualify for the postseason since they earned 16, and that was in 2019. So we've got a lot of really good teams. A lot of teams, what they play for is, not only division championships and that kind of thing, but, would you say that most of the teams play for getting into the playoffs, Dan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think the conference championship meant a lot more when we played, because there were less teams that got in, right?
Right.
Yeah. Dating ourselves again, there were only six different classes, so 1A to 6A, and at least that's what I played.
I think I did too. I'm not sure. Mine might have been just 1A and 2A.
But so you had to win that count. Remember, I mean, I think there were teams that we played on or around that were 6-3 and didn't get in.
Right. You had to win.
Yeah.
You had to win your conference mostly.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's changed that to where it's getting to that requisite number of victories to get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's the focus.
Yes, it is. And, that number of victories is 5, right?
Yeah.
I know there's 4 and 5 teams that make it. I think there was one team this year, 4 and 5. So this pissed my Prognosticus off, Dan.
Yeah.
Because, all year everybody's talking about all these 4 and 5 teams that are going to get in. And then when it comes down to it, only one 4 and 5 team gets into the playoffs. There were more last year, 4 and 5 teams. So,
I felt the same way last year though, too. It's like they're talking 4 and 5 might get you in. 4 and 5 might get you in. Nope.
Yeah. So my Prognosticus is pissed because, obviously, he likes the Chicago Catholic League, and there's a couple of 4-1 teams in the Chicago Catholic League that didn't get in. One of the primary ones is IC, right? And everybody was talking about they got so many playoff points. Even if they end up with only 4 wins, they're still going to get in. Lo and behold, they're sitting on the sidelines this year.
Well, I think I said it the other night when we were talking, or our last episode, that there's going to be some pissed off teams talking about being pissed. That they didn't get in, especially when they see probably what might be some of the scores of some of these early games. We've said it a million times. We are all for a tweaking of it,
right? But. We've said this too, Dan. I mean, how much can you tweak it, right? I mean, you start tweaking it, you tweak it, and, eventually it's like, what, are we going to tweak it every year just so teams that feel like they should be there, and there are some teams that should be there that aren't there, get in? I'm just not sure what the answer is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. There's someone out there listening right now that's going to say, "Well, just win your games."
Right.
You just got to win your games. So
just win 5 games, and you don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah. So the same thing, goes with Providence too, right? So they're going to be better than a lot of the teams they see, but they're in the conference for a reason. They're certainly capable of going 5-4. You would never really doubt that, and I'm sure those coaches could probably tell you down to the play where their season hinged, and so there's always, yes, you can tweak it. There's going to be better teams that are at home that are in the playoffs in some cases, but you're in control of your own fate,
right,
for the most part as a team.
When it comes down to it, in the state of Illinois, you got to win 5 games. So that's what you should be shooting for, and I'm sure these teams are. But don't don't rely on your playoff points and winning 4 games in that, because it shows this year that even though they said there were going to be more 4 and 5 teams, there's not. There's only one. I think that's Kenwood is the only 4 and 5 team that made it in. So, and I think last year there might have been 3 or 4 total. But anyways, so the teams that are in for the Chicago Catholic League, got Marist, got Loyola, got Nazareth, got St. Rita, St. Francis, Fenwick, Montini, Mount Carmel, Brother Rice, Joliet Catholic, St. Lawrence, Bennett, DePaul Prep, and Marmion. Pretty impressive list there, Dan.
Yeah, it is. It's a great list. We talked about it when we started the podcast, Joe, that these teams, this conference, it's why it's podcast worthy, because it's really good. They're very capable of all very capable of going on a run, deep playoff runs, and so that's it's no surprise that all these teams are in. Right.
Yeah, right. I agree. And, like we mentioned, there's a couple of teams that I think St. Ignatius and IC have both been in the playoffs for the last 8 years in a row. And this is the first year, they've snapped that streak. So I'm sure they're not feeling good about that, but, hopefully it gives them some motivation. Right, for next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting too when you look around at outside of the Chicago area. I see the similar type of offenses that I see watching film, and it's a in some cases they're all like, I won't say clones, but they're all knockoffs of Joliet Catholic's offense. It's like, boy, you see a lot of double wing, wing T, option, grind it out football. There's exceptions, obviously, so Rochester, Springfield, Griffin. So, but man, when you get away from kind of the city centers, it is grinded out time.
Yeah, it is. So, Dan, do you want to hear the other thing my prognosticus is upset about?
What's that?
So he doesn't like that in the first round, we've got 2 Chicago Catholic League teams playing each other. That's Brother Rice and Fenwick.
Yeah.
He's not happy about that.
No. And that's something that we talked about on one of these episodes. That's the conspiracy theory. Now it's light with just the one in conference game. And sometimes it's like, I don't know if people are looking to do that or not do that, but
right.
But you would think that people would try to say, these teams are from the same conference. Let's see if we can avoid that if at all possible. So maybe it's just how it fell, right? But like I said, it makes for a great game that we get to see.
All right, yeah, it does. It makes for a really good game. The other thing that my prognosticus is not happy about.
God, he's yours chatty.
Oh my God, he was so pissed this week. Once the parents came out, is what he wants is that there should be the opportunity for an all Chicago Catholic League state championship final game. So he doesn't like the way some of these brackets have been constructed, where you're eliminating three Chicago Catholic League teams in one bracket, so only one can come out of it, right? Or you have all the Chicago Catholic League teams in the North versus the South. He's really upset about that, Dan. And, I'm not sure what to do. Maybe that's a little bit more subtle on behalf of the IHSA as far as whittling it down and making sure that everything is not the Chicago Catholic League. But I tried to tell him that, but he wouldn't listen.
Yeah, he's not very agreeable.
No, he's not. He's not. Especially, it depends on what day you catch him on and what time it is in the day, because he cannot be very agreeable at some point. So
I'm
I just
so glad
listen.
mine doesn't speak.
Yeah, yours just taps on the window, right?
Yeah, it's a little annoying sometimes at night. I hear him on the roof, and then he hovers outside the window when he feels a pick come. I hear him flying down and tap 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 on the window, and
it's like,
and
oh
then
God,
we've got this unspoken communication that seems to work for us.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm going to have to talk to mine about that and say, you've got to, be a little bit more like this one over here, right? A little more tapping and a little more subtle, other than being right in my head, up in my face all the time, right?
Right. Yes.
All right.
Maybe we'll trade next year. We can trade.
That'd be good. Yeah. Okay. All right, good. So let's go through some of the games, Dan, and let's start at the with Class 3A, which is the first Chicago Catholic League team, lowest class, and that is Montini. So Montini, they're seated number 9, and they are up against number 8, North Lawndale, which is a public league team, I believe. So both teams are 7-2. Montini back in the playoffs for the second straight season. They reached the Class 3A semifinals last year. Dan, they've in some of the research I was doing, they've reached the playoffs from 1993 to 2019.
Wow.
And they've won 6 state titles in that time. And
monster.
They've competed in 3 more during that time. So
Good
you're right.
Grief.
They are a monster, aren't they?
Yeah. They have their program's rolling. They get great players. They're really well coached. And we talked about them being able to punch up in this conference, being that they're a small school. So, they're always positioned very well to do great things in the playoffs because of the schedule they play. But it really all starts with the players, and they have great players. So it's a surprise to hear that they've been in the playoffs that many times and that many years in a row, but their success has just exploded since that time.
Yeah. And we talked about, we interviewed Coach Bukowski in the preseason. We've talked about their defense, and this is really a team, even though their offense has done well, they're really starting to come together over the last 4 or 5 games or so. But they had 10 of 11 starters coming back from last year's defense. Really outstanding. We've talked about them a lot. They've got, they're led by their defensive line. You've got Nick Costello, who's one of our Dog Pound members, as well as J.C. Hayes. Their defensive back, Vince Arian, linebacker, Nick Arian, Mateo Barrett, as well as Santino, one of the Santinos. What's his last name, Dan?
Santino Tenuta.
Tenuta. That's it, Santino Tenuta.
Yes.
So,
my cousin, my Santino cousin.
That's it, your Santino cousin. But, I think they've only given up an average of 10.4 points per game. Best defense from that perspective in the Chicago Catholic League. So, they've rode their defense for the regular season, and I think they're going to ride their defense, Dan, through the playoffs as well.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. There's not a ton that you can find on North Lawndale.
Yeah,
they have you mentioned that they're 7-2. Their losses are to Mather, who's 6-3, and Sullivan, which is a number 1 seed, 9-0.
Right.
So those aren't two awful losses, and in most of the other games they've pretty much dominated. Joe, their defense. Let's see, their defense has only given up 82 points.
Right. Over
So
9 games.
over
Yeah.
9 games. So that's let's see, my arithmetic math,
Nine
nine
point
nine
nine
points a
point
game.
one.
Nine
Nine
point
point
one.
one to be exact.
Yeah.
Yes. So
So yeah, they are. They can line up and play. But that said, we talked about Israel Abrams just catching fire. This Montini is talented. They are motivated, and they are really, really on a hot streak. So, for that reason, I'm picking I'm picking Montini. Sorry, I'm picking Montini, and think that I think North Lawndale might be the best of the public school teams. That's the CPL teams that is in the playoffs in this, that are playing
this
Catholic.
class. Yeah.
Well, that are playing the Catholic League teams, but I still think Montini takes it to him a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm riding the Bronco
Yeah,
here
riding
too,
the
Dan.
Bronco.
Yep, I'm riding the Bronco. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm picking Montini as well. Interesting thing, if Montini does win this game, which I think they will, they would play the winner of the number 1 seed Byron against number 16 seed Prairie Central. So that matchup would be huge in week 2. That's a repeat of last year's matchup for Montini Byron, where Montini ended up losing that game 26-20. That was in the semifinals. So I know Montini is not looking past this game, but I know they're probably looking towards that, and they know what the brackets are, and they're going to want to get some redemption, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's part of the fun of the playoffs is going through the bracket iterations and what you could do, who you could play when. Is there going to be an upset? Ooh, this team might upset that team. So yeah, that's part of the fun. You can't avoid it with the players. I think you're better off, embracing it, saying we got to focus on this week, treat them like men, and say you guys know you have a job to do. Do not look past anyone, because a win can feel like a loss. If you don't play well, you scuffle along, you can, that can have a lasting effect. And so you want to take care of your business and take each game as it comes, survive and advance.
All right. Good. So, there we are on the 1 Class 3A Chicago Catholic League team. We're both going with Montini. Let's move to Class 4A. And the first game here, Dan, is the number 9 seed DePaul Prep versus a number 8 seed Diet. This game is Saturday at Stag Stadium.
Okay.
DePaul 6-3, Diet 7-2. We've been covering DePaul all year, and even longer than that, even in the preseason. And they're back in the playoffs for the first time, I think, since 2015. And they're going to try and win their first playoff game in program history, Dan. Wow. But we know DePaul has really played well this year. They've taken that next step. From last year, they were 4-5, just missed out. They get in this year at 6-3. Their 2 of their losses came against ranked teams. They lost to Loyola, big, but then they lost in overtime to St. Francis, who we know is a really good team. So, they've been led by Juju Rodriguez. We've talked about him. Their running back, Nick Martinez, wide receivers, Braden Peavy. Got a really good defense as well with the linebacker, Jet Reese, defensive back, Avery Bellis, who was a Zuko's Dog of the Week winner. So they have got some real talent on both sides of the ball, and they've shown it this year, and they've shown up as well this year. And I think they put themselves in a real good position in this game.
Yeah, their program is, as we've said all along, heading in the right direction, and they're probably beyond that where are we or aren't we good? They're good. There's no doubt about it. And I think Juju Rodriguez may have been co-player of the year in the purple,
Oh, yeah.
with Ryan Kabaki at Bennett, but they have uh, you know Matt Osterman is another guy. They have a ton of talent,
Mm-hmm.
and while we differ, I think North Lawndale is the best team out of some of these CPL teams that are playing Catholic League teams this week. You kind of think Diet might be the best. I still think the outcome's the same. I think DePaul, like Montini, will walk away with this, and maybe it's a game for a quarter, but I think they get that first win as DePaul Prep.
Yeah, Diet, they're back in the playoffs for their second straight season. I think the third time in their program history. They did reach a second round last year in the 4A playoffs where they did lose big. And I think it was their first playoff win ever last year in the first round. So, it's a team that's coming around. They've got some talent. They've got some momentum as well, and they're coming in off a win into the playoffs off of Lindblom on Saturday, where DePaul Prep is coming in off of a loss to Bennett, which I'm sure. That was a tough loss. It was a good game. But I believe in DePaul Prep as well, so I'm picking them in this game too, Dan. If they do win, the winner plays the number 1 seed, Sullivan, or number 16 seed, Geneseo, in the second game. So
Geneseo. Oof.
Yeah. There's a name
from our past. Yep.
Right. There's a name from the past. So, the other thing I was looking at in this bracket, Dan, is, potential matchup here in the quarterfinals. If DePaul Prep can win their next couple of games, St. Lawrence wins their next couple of games, it could be a quarterfinal matchup of two Chicago Catholic League teams, DePaul Prep and St. Lawrence. It's a winnable bracket, in my opinion. So,
yeah, they're in a good spot. They have to like their draw.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next 4A matchup is number 5 Richmond Burton versus number 12 St. Lawrence. Just talked about them. Richmond Burton 7-2, St. Lawrence 6-3. We know what St. Lawrence has done. They've made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons for, the first time since 2017. They're coming off of a, what was they're coming off of a loss last week, right?
Yeah, to Montini.
Right. But they've been without their quarterback, Chase Kwiatkowski. He's missed the whole second half of the season with an arm injury. So I know they're hoping to get him back. I think they've been a little quiet about whether he's coming back or not. But, if they do get him back, that's going to be a big difference for them.
Yeah, and, they're playing Richmond Burton, who themselves 17-year playoff run.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they've replaced a bunch of players from last year's team, but they've had a really good season. They've only lost to Notre Dame of Quincy and Johnsburg.
There we go.
There you go. Yep. Yeah. And so they're used to winning, and they're going to be tough for St. Lawrence. Joe, I honestly think the game hinges on if Kwiatkowski plays.
Yeah. So do I.
I give their sophomore quarterback a ton of props. He's come in and done what he can, but to take a step back from Chase Kwiatkowski, that's a big loss for them. They've looked like a different offense without him. They still play great defense, but they'll have their hands full with a high scoring Richmond Burton team. Richmond Burton's going to have linemen essentially in the backfield playing running back. They like those. They like those low to the ground, thick runners, and they will try and pound you. And it's their MO. They lost a couple of their big guys last year, but they filled in with other guys. Hunter Carley's a running back there. They've got a really Ray Hanneman, Luke Johnson. They've got some good offensive players. They got a lot of guys who go both ways. So that'll be a challenge for them. But they are physical and tough, and they play with an edge. So Joe, my pick is for Lawrence. But if Kwiatkowski doesn't play, I would pick RB.
All right. Yeah, and unfortunately, we probably won't know that until the game starts, right, Dan?
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, I'll go with Lawrence.
All right, St. Lawrence.
Go to homer it up a little bit here.
All right, that's good. Yeah, everything you said about Richmond Burton is true, right? As far as the quality of their program and the quality that they've reached over the course of 20 years in a row. Like you said, 17 consecutive seasons, 18 of the past 19 overall in the playoffs. They come into this game, they dominated Plano in their last game, 63-0.
Yeah, they scored a bunch of points.
Yeah, this is another team, and we've talked about some teams like this in the Chicago Catholic League that, they're not coming in trying to fool you, Dan. They come in and they say, they tell you, we are going to run the ball and we are going to run it on every down, and you are going to have to stop us. We are going to be physical. Yeah. Yep. So, this is going to be a really, really fun game, interesting game. And I've seen Richmond Burton play. Now this goes back a while, but their MO has not changed at all over the last 20 years. So they've got it down to a T as far as what they like to do and how they like to do it. So I hate to do this, but I'm going against the Chicago Catholic League here, and I'm picking Richmond Burton over St. Lawrence.
All right.
There
you go. Okay, our first difference of the night.
First difference of the night. All right. So that's the last of the 4A games. Let's move to 5A, where we've got several teams
26
here, several
teams.
games. Yeah. a lot of them. But the first one is St. Francis, number 4 seed versus number 13 seed Sterling. This is a Friday game. It's at St. Francis. Tough bracket, this bracket, but, Sterling, this is their 10th straight year that they've made the playoffs, Dan. The one thing that I do look at is if these teams are coming off a loss or coming off a win, and if they are coming off a loss, who that loss was to. So Sterling is coming off a 45-31 loss to Moline, who we know a little bit about, right? We know some of the other. Well, we know that they played Bennett early on in the year, so we've got something to go off of from there, and they lost 17-0 to Notre Dame in week 2, so it makes it really an interesting game to pick because Sterling was 5-4. They did beat a playoff team this year in Geneseo, who we know is always good. They beat last year. I think they beat Chicago Peyton in the first round. But this year they're going up against a little bit different and tougher team in St. Francis. We know what St. Francis can do. They're coming off a win last week against really a top-ranked team in Nazareth, and St. Francis is 7-2. So I'm not sure if Sterling might have enough here to go up against St. Francis in this game.
Yeah, well, you're going to see, they like to run the ball. I did read an article today about them feeling like they've improved a lot offensively since they played Notre Dame early in the season, but they have struggled in all their losses. So they got pounded by Quincy. They're a top seed, but they got pounded by them. And while we think of St. Francis as an offensive team with their weapons, Brady Palmer, Tyvon Ransom, Gavin Mueller. They've also got some studs defensively in Tanner Glock and James McGrath. Sterling has one of the state's top kickers. Ryan Gebhardt. And they've got some talent on offense with quarterback Drew Needleton and wide receiver Jimmy Wadsworth. But I think this will just be a case of St. Francis pulling away gradually in this one. I don't see it as a out the gate blowout in the first quarter. Be interested to see if there's anyone's banged up from a tough NAS game, and if there's hopefully I think the playoffs kind of do away with any sort of lull or that you feel or trap worry, but I do think that St. Francis has too much on either side of the ball. So like I said, I do see him pulling away in this one as the game goes on.
Okay. Yeah. And, we know St. Francis, they're battle tested, right? With the tough Chicago Catholic League schedule. Yeah. And they've got some really impressive wins this year, Dan. They beat Loyola in week 3. They beat DePaul Prep. And I don't know what week that was. And then last week they beat Nazareth. So, they're kind of giant killers, right? This year in the Chicago Catholic League. And, they've just, it hasn't been quietly, but they have just churned along from week to week and, racked up an impressive regular season at 7-2. As you mentioned, they got a ton of talent on the offensive side of the ball as well as the defensive side of the ball. And I think they're going to be too much for Sterling. So I'm picking St. Francis here as well. And if they do end up winning this game, they would play the winner of number 5 Prairie Ridge and number 12 Good from Chicago. So
Joe, maybe they're a giant. Maybe instead of being a giant killer,
maybe they're
just another giant.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it, Dan.
Yeah.
This is a tough bracket, by the way.
God.
I mean, they've got, so Prairie Ridge is here. We know how good they are from year to year. And then you've also got Sycamore, who's, one of the top teams in the state, 9-0 this year as well. So, St. Francis has got what it takes, I think, to make it through this bracket, but it's going to be a meat grinder.
Well, they're used to it, right?
They are.
We haven't said meat grinder in a while.
No, we haven't.
We kind of went CCL, but
hashtag meat grinder.
Yeah, so they are. Yeah. They're 5A hashtag meat grinder. Yeah,
right.
For a lot of these teams, really tough and interesting bracket.
Yeah. Okay. So the next game within the 5A class is number 2 seed Rochelle versus number 15 Marmion. This is a Friday game, and it's at Rochelle. Rochelle 8-1, Marmion 5-4. The one interesting thing here for me with this game, Dan, is this is one of the games or one of the matchups where both teams have a common opponent, right? So Rochelle played Marian Catholic. They won that game fairly easily. Marmion played Marian Catholic as well, and they got the win in that too. I don't know what that says. Marmion won 21-7. Rochelle won 48-23. Rochelle pretty much had it in hand, by the end of the first half, but I think from a standpoint of, the matchup and how tough this might be, I think Marmion puts up a good fight here against Rochelle in this game.
Have you watched any film on Rochelle?
I have.
Yeah, so I like
scary.
I love the play. They run a ton of power, right?
Yes.
So they run a lot of power. You see, they will in what looks like the quarterback leading. He'll either pitch it and then he's going through the whole first.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's some serious old school running game there. And real power football. Joe, their top 3 running backs are all right around 1,000 yards. I think Grant Gessler and Dylan Manning both are over 1,000 yards. Roman Villalobos is right at about 900. So they've got a couple guys, O lineman Caden Morris, a 4-year starter. So they've got some experience, and their running game. They're going to run the double wing. You see that, like I said, you see a lot of double wing as soon as you leave the Chicago area.
Yeah, you do.
But Marmion will be a little more balanced. But I think this game comes down to the defenses. It'll be interesting to see if Cameron Tolliver or Roy Magana Jr., what they do at quarterback. I kind of think it's going to be Cameron Tolliver.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
Dan.
But either way, I think Rochelle's defense will give them the edge here. So my pick is for Rochelle.
Yeah, I think so too, Dan. And Rochelle, like you just mentioned, all their weapons on offense. I think out of all the matchups I looked at and all the teams in the matchups, Rochelle is a team that averages the most points per game on offense, and that's over 42. Dan, but like you said, after watching a little bit of their film, that doesn't surprise me. They can run the ball, and they do it, and they don't apologize for it. They just say, this is what we're going to do. And, let's see if you can stop us. And I'm not sure if Marmion can, and I think Rochelle is going to win this game as well. The winner of this game, Dan, would play the winner of the Bennett versus Perspectives Leadership. So potential matchup here if Marmion can pull this out of Chicago Catholic League teams in the second round. But I think Rochelle wins this, so I'm going with them as well.
All
right. So let's move on to that game. The number 7 seed Bennett versus number 10 Perspectives Leadership Co-op. Dan. The Coop. Hashtag Coop. Bennett 6-3. Perspectives 5-4. What are you looking at in this game, Dan? What do you think?
I think this one will be a struggle for Perspectives. I think that they have they found themselves in the playoffs, but a tough draw for them to play a Catholic League school. They don't necessarily have the same. Well, they don't have the same level of talent as Bennett. Bennett is really dangerous. Their offense can really put up points. Their defense is opportunistic, so they may get a chance to get some takeaways here. They seem to have been pretty good when healthy, taking the football away. It's been a big part of their defense. So I think, Bennett's also dangerous on special teams. Luke Doyle could have a big game. For Bennett. Just in the receiving game and in the return game as well. So I think there are some of these games where you could like rewind what I said, change the names, and hit the same thing. But I think Bennett wins this one big.
Yeah. So Bennett's got 3 losses, but those 3 losses, Dan, have come against Mount Carmel, then Fenwick, then Nazareth. Right. Obviously Bennett wants to win those games, but I don't think there's any shame in losing to those 3 teams. When you think about where they're at and the caliber of play for them this year. So, and then they end up beating DePaul Prep in the last regular season game of the year, which was huge, right?
Yeah, that's the one to put a star on. Those other ones, they lost to those 3 highly ranked teams, but even in the losses, they didn't look good either. But DePaul Prep, I think, got them back feeling better about themselves and saying, hey, we can compete, and we have to know we can. I think maybe against some of those big, highly ranked teams, they maybe felt like, I don't know, maybe they didn't have the confidence going in, but I think that victory should give them some confidence. I think it might be sneaky this year for a couple rounds.
Yeah, I think so too, and I really like that they're coming in off a win off a against a tough DePaul prep team. I think that that sets them up well, puts them in the right frame of mind, all of those kinds of things. So I'm picking Bennett as well in this game, Dan. And by the way, I just mentioned this, but just as a reminder, the winner of this game will play the winner of the Rochelle Marmion game. So let's go to the next one, and that is the number 3 seed Nazareth versus number 13 Peyton. Naz 7-2, Peyton 5-4. This is as I was looking at some of the information on this, Peyton, this is their 13th straight season in the playoffs. Which I think is pretty impressive, Dan. Now, the only thing is they've only won one of those playoff games, during that span in the first round. So they're looking to take that next step for sure. Unfortunately, they've got to try and do that against Nazareth, who, as we know and as we covered, is just they've had an outstanding season. They've got outstanding players on offense and on defense. The Peyton, they held their opponents to an average of just under 14 points per game, but they haven't seen anybody like Nazareth, and I think they're in for awakening against Nazareth this week.
Yeah, I do too. Joe, it's funny you talked about finding some information. Like, what do you think you find when you type in Chicago Peyton football? You find a lot of Walter Payton and the Bears. It's like you gotta high school. Yeah. And then it's like the high schools Walter Payton worked out with when he was a player. It's like, nope. All right, now look try this. So I know that they played well in the Chicago Public League, but the level of talent, Joe, and the experience that Nazareth has.
Right.
The playoff experience in this team. Some guys, 4 years they've started and have been, playoff teams. So I just think they're going to overwhelm the Grizzlies of Peyton. And I see Naz with a running clock in this one.
Yeah, I think so too, Dan. Like you mentioned, Naz has the second longest playoff streak in the Chicago Catholic League. They've qualified every year since 2013. They've won 2 straight 5A championships, going for the 3rd straight this year. They've got some dynamic players on offense, and their quarterback, Logan Malachuk. They're scoring an average of 34 points a game. I think they've only scored less than that in one game this year. And then we know what they're like on defense too. They've with Gabe Kaminsky and their other linebacker, Lesroy Tittle. Yep. Gabe Kaminsky, one of our Zuko's Dog of the Week winners. Another one, they're double dogs. They've got their defensive back, Garrett Reese, also on defense. So they are going to be tough. And I don't see any way that Peyton is able to stay with them. So I'm with you on this, Dan. I'm going with Naz, and I think you said running clock. I might put a check in that box too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's all 5A?
No, we got one more.
Oh yeah, who is it?
Guess.
Let's see.
Come on. It's one of your favorite teams. They're out south. The initials.
Joliet Catholic.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. So we got one more, Dan. And Joliet Catholic is the number 6 seed going against number 11 seed Jacksonville. This game is on Saturday, and it's a Saturday night game, which I like, instead of Saturday in the middle of the day, but 7:30 at Joliet Catholic. Jacksonville. So last year, let's see, 6-3. they're both teams are 6-3 this year. Joliet Catholic and Jacksonville. Jacksonville out of the playoffs last year. They're back this year. They've lost in the first round both in 2021 and 2022. They're looking for their first playoff win, Dan, since 2013, even though they've been getting into the playoffs off and on over the course of that time. They played a pretty tough schedule. They one of their losses, I know they played Quincy Notre Dame, who's always a good team. But one of the things that I found,
Sacred Heart, they lost to
Sacred Heart, right? Yeah. They've averaged 41.2 points per game, Dan.
Yeah, they're a running machine.
Yes.
Lamarion Williams, Jeremiah Jackson, and Joe, maybe the best kicker in the state, Brandon Sim. He's made 55-yarder.
Yeah.
So it could be a really fun game with a lot of points. I don't know enough about their defense, only what the scores say, and defense performed, very well in the games where the offense performed very well. Right. So gave up a lot of points to some of the better teams out there, I think, but I think it has a potential to be a really high scoring game. These guys can fly.
Okay.
While I think Joliet Catholic will eventually, wear them down, they just might not be able to hang with them defensively, and they'll allow Joliet Catholic to do what they do and hang on to the ball. They may score fast, and Joliet Catholic will kind of plod along and wait for them to make mistakes, and I think that's how Joliet Catholic wins this one. So while I think it's going to be really, I predict an entertaining game, I'm going to predict Joliet Catholic to advance.
Okay, yeah, and we know what Joliet Catholic has done this season. They do have 3 losses, but when you look at those 3 losses and you look at the opponents, so they lost to, number 4 in 8A, Oswego, first game of the year. They lost to number 1 in 5A, Nazareth. And then they lost to number 1 in 7A, Mount Carmel. So, wow. But then they also beat number 5 in 6A at the time, Fenwick. They beat number 5 in 8A, Marist. So, they've had a really, really kind of grinder of a schedule for sure. And they've come out the other side of it, I think, and they've come out the other side of it much stronger. I mean, we know they love to run the ball. There's no secret about that. And, their running backs, Larry Stringham, Nate McGreeny, Keegan Farnhouse, they've all been really good this year. Defense, they've been able to hold teams down to under 17 points a game. Their linebacker, Daniel Rouse, who we've talked about several times over the course of the season, is really their leader on defense and has done had an excellent season. I think they're going to be too much too for Jacksonville, and I'm picking Joliet Catholic in this.
Yeah, Jacksonville better tighten their chin straps. Because right. Joliet Catholic will hit you, over and over and over again from every position on the field.
Yes, they will. All right, so let's move to 7A, where I think we have 3 games, Dan. The first one is number 12 seed Fenwick versus number 21, Brother Rice. The only first round Chicago Catholic League matchup. This is going to be a really good game, Dan.
Yeah.
We know. I mean, we've talked about Brother Rice after starting out with some really kind of tough losses. They've won 5 straight. Getting into the playoffs now for their 6th straight year in a row. Their wins are coming against some really quality teams. I mean, their losses were close games, right? They lost to Brother Rice they lost to Marist in overtime. They lost to Rita in the last couple of minutes, and then they lost to Loyola, right? I think on the last play of the game.
Right.
But they beat Mount Carmel, without, I know Mount Carmel didn't have Jack Elliott, but, they were able to beat Mount Carmel and give them one of their losses. But, I think on both sides, offense and defense, Brother Rice is really kind of peaking at the right time here. And, this is going to be I think it's going to be a close game, Dan, between Fenwick and Brother Rice.
Yeah, I have in my notes, I think that the team that gets to 21 points wins. Might even be the team that gets to 17 points wins. Both defenses are great. They hold opponents to average under 2 touchdowns a game. And it might come down to what passing game can do more damage against the opponent's secondary.
Yeah.
With that said, Joe, I'm going to stick to a trend here that we've seen and that we've talked about a lot. And I'm going to pick the QB that has been more dangerous with his feet, and that's CJ Gray.
CJ Gray, all right.
Yeah, so I think that Brother Rice playing really well. They've won 5 in a row?
Yeah,
yes. 5 in a row, and so I think they're going to get to that 21-point threshold, and then I think they keep Fenwick to what their defense has been keeping teams to all year, and that's around 14. So I see this kind of as a tight game, just like you said. Could be 17-14, could be 21-14, but I'm going to pick Brother Rice in this one.
Okay, yeah, and so we know Fenwick's defense has been so good, right, with Nate Marshall and Jack Paris and Tommy Thies. I think all of those, are they double dogs, or we've got at least a Zuko's dog of the week there named Marshall, and we've got a couple other.
Oh, they load up the pound.
They load up the pound.
Yeah,
for
Jack
sure.
Paris, both the Thieses. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I think they've limited their opponents to only 13 points per game, which is only second to maybe Montini in the Chicago Catholic League as far as defense is concerned. I'm interested to see who Fenwick plays or who their quarterback is going to be this week, Dan. I know Frankie Hosty, was the quarterback last week. He had a really good game. Now, Jalen Morgan was the quarterback earlier in the year. Not sure if he was hurt or if they were just looking for a bit of a change of pace last week in their game. I like what Frankie Hosty did, quarterback, but, I think it'll be interesting to see who they go with, if both are healthy against Brother Rice. Yeah, I like Fenwick in this game, Dan. It's a hard pick because I've watched what Brother Rice has done over the last 5 weeks, and in some cases I've been a little bit surprised. But after having watched them now from week to week, I'm not all that surprised anymore. But I am going to go with Fenwick in this game, Dan. This game is at Fenwick, even though it's not at the school. It's at Triton College. I think maybe that might play a little bit into it, but I'm picking Fenwick over Brother Rice.
All right. Well, that is it's probably the most interesting game we have, in the Catholic League, and it's of course 2 Catholic League teams. But
right,
so goes the playoffs. But so it's it's really kind of a toss up. So, but I'll be interested in watching that one pretty closely.
Yeah. So, and one more thing on that. This is another tough bracket, Dan. The winner of this game gets to play the winner of Downers Grove North and Wheaton Warrenville South. So, yeah, this tough bracket to get through here. But, they got to get through game 1 first. So we'll see how that goes.
We can look ahead. They can't.
Right. Yeah, at least that's what the coaches are saying. I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so the next game here in 7A is St. Rita in Guilford, which is in Rockford. St. Rita 7-2, Guilford 6-3. Guilford, they did not make the playoffs last year. They're back in for the second time, and let's see, in 3 seasons. They're actually looking for their first playoff win since 2007, Dan. So, even though they've had some success in getting in, they have not had much success in getting past game one. But when you look at their losses, they're they've lost to some really good teams this year. They lost to Belvedere North, who's 8-1. They lost to Hananaga, Rockton Hananaga, who's also 8-1. Did I say that right?
You nailed it.
I nailed it. And they lost to Harlem, who I believe is in McChesney Park, 7-2. So they've played some tough competition, and they've been able to average just under 21 points a game. They won their last 4 games to end the regular season. They've only given up 7.8 points per game, which to me is just amazing. But they haven't seen a team like St. Rita. Right.
Yeah. The closest thing is probably, Hananaga. And they're a rough and tumble team out of that conference, and probably from a physicality standpoint, the closest to St. Rita. Rita has great size, great speed. That'll probably likely be too much for Guilford. I kind of see a similar score to the Hananaga score. That was not the closest game, but St. Rita's defense is so damn good. They're so good. You really have to have it buttoned down if you're gonna score consistently against them, and I just don't see Guilford having enough. So, I'm picking St. Rita in this game. I think they've got too much with Armbruster and Jones and Nick Herman and everyone on the defense, Justin Buckner and Kingsbury. They're just loaded with players. So I think Guilford has a tough time.
Yeah, loaded with players and battle tested as well. I mean, they couple of their wins, they defeated. They beat Brother Rice. They beat St. Francis. Now they lost to Mount Carmel, and I believe they lost to Nazareth as well. But when you talk about being battle tested for a team that's 7-2 in St. Rita, they've really been battle tested this year, and I think they are really well positioned for the playoffs. And I picked them to win this game as well, and I picked them to win this game pretty easily, Dan.
Yeah, and Joe, where would they go next if they were to win?
The winner will take on the winner of the game of Rockton Hananaga or Willowbrook.
Okay.
Yeah. So Rockton and Hananaga is the number 7 seed. Willowbrook's number 26 seed, which surprised me a little bit, but I haven't followed Willowbrook that much. But
no, yeah. and Hananaga is traditionally really, really good. Like I said, physicality, they've got it. So that'll be another interesting bracket.
Yes. All right. So I think we've got. Do we have one more team here in 7A?
Marist?
Yes. Nope. We already covered them, didn't we? No, they're 8A.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're 8A.
Yeah, the last 7A game is number 19 seed, which makes me laugh every time I say it or look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Mount Carmel versus number 14 seed Harlem. This game is Friday, November 1st at 6 o'clock at Harlem. Mount Carmel 6-3, Harlem 7-2. We know everything about Mount Carmel, Dan. Right. They're back in the playoffs for the 7th straight year. They're trying to win their 3rd straight 7A state championship. I think what was the other streak I saw? They've made the postseason each season since 1986, with the exception of 1 year. And during that period of time, they've won 14 state titles, and they played in 19 state title games during that period of time. Just unreal, isn't it?
Great program. Yeah, storied. So yeah, and really very talented. They do it differently than they did back in the day, right? They were an option team. They've had some good throwers in the past and good receivers in the past, but their bread and butter was running the ball, and Donovan McNabb and those guys that they've had, and even their coach, they were kind of a running team. Why is it his name's escaping me?
Jordan Lynch.
Yes, when Jordan Lynch was there, he can do both, but primarily a running guy. Yeah, now they're like Steve Spurrier coach team. They love to
right.
love to throw the ball. Not that they can't run it with Daniel Taylor, but they love to throw the ball over the place, and it'll be a fun game to watch because Harlem Joe has Jumani Muhammad at running back. He is the all-time leading rusher in their conference, the Nick 10.
Yeah.
And he is the focal point of their offense, and we know what Mount Carmel can do. We talked about it, and their defense is going to have their hands full with Muhammad and quarterback Nate Jones. I think what will separate Mount Carmel in this, and I'm picking Mount Carmel, is their passing game is just going to be too much for the Huskies. Like I've said, it's like Nazareth, it's very complex. They ask a lot of their receivers and quarterback, and very tough to defend. I've thought that they've been like an option team, but through the air, they wear you down. They keep the football. It's pretty impressive. So I'm gonna pick Mount Carmel in this one, and it might be fun to watch, because there might be a lot of points here.
Yeah. And this, I'm going to go with Mount Carmel as well, Dan. I think, just watching or thinking about some of the games that I watched this year, and watching some of the film, Jack Elliott he's just an outstanding player. I know he's getting Player of the Year consideration. I'm not sure he'll win that. Over the quarterback from Lincoln Way East, but Jack Elliott has had just an outstanding year. They've averaged just under 34 points a game. A lot of that is due to him. Yes, he's got some good weapons in Quentin Burrell, as well as even running the ball, like you mentioned, Daniel Taylor. But they've got a good defense too, even though they've given up some points this year, and they've a couple teams have tried to exploit them a little bit, seeing where maybe some of the cracks in their defense might be. And, if they do have some cracks in their defense, I would say it might be on the, their pass defense. Now, I'm not sure that's what Harlem wants to do. They're going to want to run the ball. And I think, even though they've got an outstanding running back in Jumani Muhammad, they're going right up against the teeth of that Mount Carmel defense. With Matt Mucha, linebacker, their Braden Jones, who's defensive lineman, going to USC. So I think as far as the matchups go in this game, as far as offense against defense and players against players, I think Mount Carmel comes out on top in this as well. So I'm picking Mount Carmel over Harlem. The winner, Dan, in this bracket will take on the winner of number 3 seed St. Charles North and the number 30 seed Rolling Meadows. By the way, Rolling Meadows, that's a team that's coached by former Bears kicker
Maury Buford.
No, no, place kicker.
Robbie Gold?
Robbie Gold, yes. Yeah. Maury Buford, my God. You really pulled that out of somewhere. I'm not sure where. But anyways, that's it. All right, so we're in agreement on that one. We like Mount Carmel. So now we'll go to the last class 8A. First game here, number 5 seed Marist versus number 23 Glenburg South. This game's on Friday night. It's going to be at Marist. We've got Marist, who's 8-1, Glenburg South, who's 5-4. supposedly, I've heard that Glenbrook South has played one of the more tougher schedules in the state this year. They've lost to Barrington, who we know is really good.
Yeah.
They've lost to Hersey, another really good team this year, Maine South. And they're coming in on an uptick here. They've won their last 2 games of the regular season. So, they're averaging a lot of points per game, Dan. They're up over 29 points per game. So that always bodes well for them. I know they're going up against Marist, who has an excellent defense. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much success they're going to have, but when I was looking at this game and looking at some of the stats as well as some of the predictions as far as this goes, I thought this might be an interesting game too here against Glenbrook South for Marist.
Yeah, and Glenbrook South they do run a lot of double wing, which is what Joliet Catholic runs, right? Yep. And so that seemed to give Marist the most difficulty, obviously the one defeat, this year, but so it can be difficult to defend, and it if there's a seam, you don't need a ton of room to advance the football, and if there's a seam, they can take it to the house pretty quickly. But we had a chance to stop by Marist practice this week. What did you think? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
One word to describe Marist.
Size.
Big. I was thinking big.
They're big.
Yes, they are a bunch of big men. Man, yeah. They are a big team. And shame on us. We haven't talked about Rico Schreiber at all this year.
Yeah.
6'7", 345. Just looks like a wing of the school. And he is
right.
He is.
I think they built one for him, Dan. It was on the backside. You might have missed it. It had a big dome over the top.
Right. Right.
Oh no. That was a planetarium. So he's as big as a planet. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And they're such a well-rounded team. They've got talent, dispersed, like high-level talent dispersed throughout every position group on their team. I really love how they play. Their practice was awesome to watch, very well run. So I think they just seem like they're loaded for the playoffs, and if we've said it once, we've said it 10 times, battle tested, right. And have seen it all this year. And I think it's a great opportunity to start off with a strong win this week. I know we probably be fun to pick an upset, but I just don't think this is it. I think Marist wins this one.
Yeah, Coach Fitzgerald has done such a good job. In his first year, coming back to Marist. And you mentioned battle tested, Dan. I mean, Marist is 8-1 this year. They're one loss, right, in a tough schedule, tough Chicago Catholic League schedule. That came to Joliet Catholic, but that was in double overtime, right?
Right.
So they are battle tested. They are extremely talented on both sides. We met some of them this week. One of our Zuko's Dog of the Week winners, Brad Fitzgibbon. He's a leader on that defensive line for Marist. He's done a great job. Along with their other, I think it's a Harvard commit. That's Achilles Anderson. And they've held their opponents down to under 15 points a game. So another really good defense in a really tough Chicago Catholic League. I think Jake Ritter, who, we end up talking about week in and week out as far as what he's been able to do.
Yeah.
And he's one of those quarterbacks that, gets things done and runs the offense real well. And he's that dual threat that we talked about. I just think they've got their senior running back, John McCullough, who's not only an excellent runner, but he's a big weapon out of the backfield as well. So they're loaded with talent. They play really hard. And I think they're going to be way too much for Glenbrook South as well. So I'm going with Marist, Dan, in this game.
All right. That should be a fun one, though.
It will be. Will be a fun one. So that brings us to our last game. And this one is number 12 seed Loyola versus the number 23 seed Belleville East. So I think, Dan, this year, I'm not sure if they did this last year, but in 7A and 8A, instead of the 1 through 16 seeds in the north and the south, I'll call it, 7A and 8A just went 1 through 32, right?
Yeah, and they will do that when most of the schools are from the same area. I think they divide them when you're going to have this large swath of territory, to cover. So they build like I know in 5A it's a north and a south bracket, right? Joliet Catholic sneaks just into the south side of the bracket, which is why they kind of have different routes there than let's say St. Francis, Nazareth, or Bennett or Marmion. So with these all being kind of closely close in proximity, they can go 1 through 32.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And this is the other game where there is a common opponent, Dan, I think. You check me if I'm wrong. All right. So Loyola lost to East St. Louis, first game of the year. Right. Big, right?
Yep.
Belleville East lost to East St. Louis as well. Big, 40-0. So bigger. Yeah. Not by too much, though.
No, you're right. Yeah.
So, I don't know if you can use that as a criteria or not as far as picking this game, but, Belleville East ended up the season at 6-3. We know Loyola was 7-2. Loyola, after starting out a little bit slow, and then dealing with some injuries on the offensive line, as well as the quarterback, Ryan Fitzgerald, they've really put it together over the last several games, haven't they? I mean, peaking at the right time, and last week just really handing it to Mount Carmel.
Yeah, they come in on a roll, right? They come in on a high, and Belleville East is interesting. They're young on offense, which I think is a benefit to Loyola. You talked about the common opponent, East St. Louis. It's a good one, but I think the difference in this game is going to be Loyola's experienced defense, which Joe has just gotten better and better and better as the year has gone on. So Donovan Robinson, reigning dog of the week, and Mickey Maher, they kind of lead that defense, and it's a kind of a DB led group, and I think that's probably going to be the difference in this game, but it might be closer than people think, because Belleville East can really, really get after it offensively, a little bit. So my pick's the Ramblers. I will say that I think Belleville East gets the commute of the week. Joe, do you want to know how many miles?
Can I guess, Dan?
Yeah.
All right. Wait. I'm trying to to channel the Prognosticus right now too, because he did a little more research this week than he's ever done in the past.
He doesn't seem like a research guy.
He's not, but for some reason this interested him, and I think it's 310 miles. Is that right?
That is a great guess. Your Prognosticus is good.
He's very good.
He's good. Yeah. Mine's flown it a couple times.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mine would never fly it. He would be
He's
tired.
Be in the car, right?
Yeah.
He is a car guy. Yeah.
He'd be hanging on to some car's bumper, and he'd be coughing, all that kind of stuff. So he would never do it. Yeah. So all that said, you're picking Loyola? Is that what you said?
I'm picking Loyola.
Yeah.
Good guess on the 310.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think Loyola too is going to win this game. We mentioned it briefly. I think they're peaking at the right time here. Ryan Fitzgerald is healthy. which is huge for them. He's shown that, and they've shown that as a team, that when he's in there, there's a huge difference in the way Loyola looks. So, and I think their defense, like you said, Belleville East, they're going to want to move the ball. They're going to want to throw it, and I like what Loyola's defensive backfield looks like. Like you said, led by Donovan Robinson, our current Zuko's Dog of the Week winner. So I am going with Loyola as well. Interesting tidbit on this, Dan. The winner, and this is one of the things that made my prognosticus mad, was so the winner of this game takes on the winner of Marist or Glenbrook South. So, if our predictions come true and Loyola wins and Marist wins, unfortunately, we've got to knock one CCL team out of the playoffs, right away in the second round.
Yeah, but what a great game. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
We'll take it.
Yeah,
we like good games.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so that's it, Dan. Do you have any more thoughts?
I did.
Or are you out of them?
It left me. My one thought left me. No. One thing I will be interested to see. We've kind of talked about it a little bit, and so I've paid attention. I'm interested to see what the kicking games do. And if maybe not this week, but maybe next week, to see where that starts to become a factor. We've seen some good kickers, seen some not so good kickers, and teams struggle to convert the extra points. And that becomes a big deal as you advance the playoffs. And it can be a big weapon in some of these games, and that come down to a team being able to convert a 40-yard field goal.
Yeah. Well, I had a suggestion made by someone I ran into, for some of our future episodes, Dan, is that we need to have what I would call a specialist spotlight. So we spotlight a specialist every week, whether it be a kicker, somebody who's great coverage guy, whatever it might be, right?
Yes. Long snapper.
There's
a lot of good ones out there. A lot of kids seeing that as a path to playing college football.
I know. Yeah. It's important. You just mentioned how important it is, and but we can't cover everything, can we?
Yeah, we need, if people want to sign up to be a spotter for us, right. and maybe just get us information on some of those specialists. Gunners. Get us gunner information.
Kicker information, long snapper information. That's really all you need, right?
So would we take out returners?
Oh, no, returners. Sorry. They're important too.
I can see where this award's going to go every week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But
all right. For
a bad idea.
Not a bad idea.
Staff of dozens. Yeah, we can do that.
Yes. 2025 for sure.
Right.
Yeah, we'll make sure we incorporate that. So, all right, Dan, that's it for our Prognosticus episode. I think we probably need to let people know that there will not be a Friday Night Blitz this week. We only have a couple games on Friday. We've got a bunch of games on Saturday. So instead, you'll have to wait for our recap episode, which will come out after the games this weekend. And I'm sure you'll be looking forward to that. But we've enjoyed the Friday Night Blitz, Dan, and we'll pick that up sometime next year as well.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. The playoffs are going to be awesome. We will do what we can to keep people informed. And yeah, we love doing it, and looking forward to watching these games in the playoffs.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will talk to you again very soon.